Hari Om. Ajam nirvikalpam nirakaramekam niranandamanandam purnam param nirgunam nirvishesham niriham parabrahma rupam ganesham bhajema. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Namaste. Welcome to session 94 of Bhagavad Gita verse by verse. We have come to the last part of Bhakti Yoga. We are going to see the exemplary qualities of a Parabhakta. He is a Viragi, a sthita prajñā, pure from within and without, free from all sorrows and pleasures, one who has no friends and enemies, one who has dedicated himself to Supreme Lord. At the end of session, we will have the chanting of these verses. Now, before Dr. Hegde sir introduces us to the day's topic, let's look back at the verses we studied in our last class with Sri Vishwanath. Over to you, Vishwanath.
Sri Gurubhyo Namaha. In chapter 12, up to verse 12, deals with Bhakti Yoga as a means of moksha. Verse 13 to 20 deals with Bhakti Yoga Phalam, which is moksha itself. Chapter 12 started with Arjuna's question to Lord Krishna. Who is superior? Vishwarupa Ishvara Bhakta or Arupa Ishvara Bhakta? It is like asking someone to remain fit. Is eating healthy food is good or doing exercise every day is good? The answer is obvious because both are needed. Lord Krishna's intelligent answer is Vishwarupa Ishvara Bhakta is indeed great, but Arupa Ishvara Bhakta attains me. In this chapter, Lord Krishna subdivides sadhanas into 5 levels. All these 5 stages are put together, are called Bhakti Yoga. Next slide, Doctor. Highest level is Jnana Yoga, Nirguna Arupa Ishvara Dhyanam, through the practice of Vedanta Shravana Mananam and Nididhyasanam. Upasana Yoga level 2, Saguna Aneka Ishvara Rupa, Rupa Ishvara Dhyanam. Lord Krishna asks us to visualize the entire creation as God. This helps us to reduce raga dveshas considerably and paves the way for Nirguna Ishvara Dhyanam. Upasana Yoga level 1, Saguna Eka Rupa Ishvara Dhyanam. Lord Krishna calls this 3rd level of sadhana as Abhyasa Yoga. This Upasanam helps us to focus within. Next is Karma Yoga level 2, which is Nishkama Karma. Develop the desire to giving because success is directly proportional to giving. This is what we saw up to verse 10. With this background, let us look at the recap of verses 11 to 15. The verse 11, Dr. Previous slide, verse 11 starts with Lord Krishna saying, if you cannot do any of the 4 levels of sadhana, do Karma Yoga level 1, Sakama Karma. Do karma to fulfill your worldly desires by legitimate, unselfish methods and accept the success of phalam you receive as Ishvara Prasada. Next slide, please. Verse 12 is probably the most confusing shloka in chapter 12. In the 5 levels of sadhanas, Karma Phala Tyaga is given as the lowest status or weightage. In this list, he places Karma Phala Tyaga as the highest one. Lord Krishna contradicts what he said in the previous 11 shlokas. Now, he gives the list of 4 sadhanas where Karma Phala Tyaga, renunciation of results of action, is the highest and superior form of meditation, superior to meditation. Lord Krishna grades the 4-fold sadhanas from lowest to highest as follows. Abhyasa means meditation upon God or Ishvara Chintanam, which is knowledge-less meditation. Second is Jnanam, thorough study of scriptures, meditation-less Jnanam, knowledge. Dhyanam, which is the mixture of knowledge and meditation. And finally, Karma Phala Tyaga, dedicating all karma phalams to the Lord and taking back whatever is received as Ishvara Prasada from Lord. But Sri Adi Shankaracharya ji clarifies that Lord Krishna intentionally places karma phala tyaga above meditation because Lord Krishna wants to encourage people by emphasizing karma phala tyaga sadhana. With this, Lord Krishna concludes Bhakti Yoga Sadhanani. Also, with this, the first part of chapter 12 is over. From verse 13 to 19, Lord Krishna enumerates the benefits achieved by a devotee who is successfully gone through the 5 levels of bhakti, and how does such a highest bhakta or Advaita Jnani conduct himself in the world when he faces different situations in life. Lord Krishna begins the list of the qualities of Parabhakta, which helps him to face situations, good or bad. Next slide, Doctor. In verse 13, he says, my devotee is a non-hater of all beings. He is friendly. He is compassionate, free from I notion. Same in comfort as well as discomfort, and forbearance. Non-mamkara here means does not own anything and does not identify with the external world. And non-ahamkara means does not identify with his own body, mind, sense complex. Next slide. In verse 14, Lord Krishna says, my devotees' mind and intellect are fixed upon me. He is ever contented, tranquil, and self-restrained. Next slide, Doctor. And in verse 15, the previous slide, please. And in verse 15, he describes his devotee as a tender flower. He is not disturbed by the good and bad events and actions of the world. He is free from elation, envy, fear, and anxiety. In summary, Lord Krishna says, someone who is world dependence to God dependence, someone who is God dependence to self-dependence, and self-dependence to independence is dear to me. Some more special characteristics of Jnani, who is dear to Lord Krishna, we will see in today's class. Hari Om.
Thank you, Dr. Vishwanath. That was a nice, painstakingly done summary of the verses that we studied in the last class, and very well handled controversial 12th verse where Sri Krishna alters the priority, and a nice explanation given to clarify this by Sri Adi Shankaracharya. Sadashiva Samarambam Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Pariyantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om. With this class, we come to the end of another beautiful Bhagavad Gita chapter, the 12th chapter devoted or titled Bhakti Yoga. Although this chapter is titled Bhakti Yoga, it is important to see there are so many verses in the Bhagavad Gita all through on Bhakti in the rest of the Bhagavad Gita. In fact, one of the beautiful exercises we can do is to pick and choose those verses on Bhakti in the Bhagavad Gita. An exercise I have done is in our previous classes, we have chosen from the present Shatkam. That means from 7th onwards, we have discussed Bhakti verses in the 7th chapter, 8th chapter, and the 9th chapter. In today's class, we will see a set of verses on Bhakti which come from the 11th chapter. Arjuna, when he goes through all those emotions, when he sees Vishwarupa Ishvara, and then he comes to the state of Bhakti, and these are so beautiful, they have to be sung. I will request Venkatesh Prasad to sing it for us. Venkatesh, please.
Arjuna uvacha sthane hrishikesh tava prakirtya jagat prahrashyatyanurajyate cha rakshamsi bhitani dishodravanti sarve namasyanti cha siddha sangha tasmacha tena nameran mahatman gariyase brahmanopyadhikartre Ananta devesha jagannivasa Tvamaksharam sadasattatparam yat Tvamadideva purusha puranaha Tvamasya vishvasya param nidhanam Vettasi vedyancha parancha dhama Tvaya tatam vishvamanantarupa Vayuryamognirvarunasya shankah Prajapatisvam prapitamahascha Namo namastestu sahasrakrutvaha Punascha bhuyopi namo namaste Namah purastadatha pruštataste Namostu te sarvata yeva sarva Ananta viryamita vikramasvam Sarvam samapnoshi tatosi sarvaha Sakheti matva prasabham yaduktam He Krishna he Yadava he Sakheti Ajanata mahimanam tavedam Maya pramadat pranayena vapi Yacchāvahāsarthamasatkrūtosi Vihara shayyasana bhojaneshu Yekothavapyachuta tatsamaksham Tatkramayet pamaham aprameyam Pitasi lokasya characharasya Tvamasya pujyascha gurur kariyan Natvat samostyabhyadikah kutonyo Lokatrayepya pratima prabhava Tasmat pranamya pranidhaya kayam Prasadayet tvamahamishamidhyam Piteva putrasya sakheva sakhyuh Priya priyayarhasi deva sodhum Adrushta purvam rushitosmi drushtva Bhayena cha prayathitam mano me Tadeva me darshaya deva rupam Prasida devesha jagannivasa Kiritinam gadinam chakrahastam Ichchami tvam drashtumaham tathaiva Tenaiva rupena chaturbhujena Sahasrabaho bhava vishvamurte. Hari Om.
Thank you, Venkatesh, for a very melodious chanting of these bhakti verses, which bring in the bhava of bhakti. We are now in the concluding part of the 12th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna gives us an opportunity to classify bhaktas into two categories. He is now talking about the highest bhakta or a para bhakta, also called a jnani bhakta. Now, if there is a jnani bhakta, then there is a one lower quality who is an apara bhakta. An apara bhakta is also called a sadhana bhakti, whereas para bhakti is also called sadhya, the one who is accomplished. One who has accomplished all the 5 sadhanas. That means we have gone through the 2 levels of karma yoga, the 2 levels of upasana yoga, has gone through all the stages of jnana yoga and has now become a jnani. Such a person who is now a para bhakta. Now, what does such a person have to pray for? There is nothing that such a person has to pray, because now a person has attained to purnatvam, has attained to everything. But he still would pray and would still have a heart full of devotion. But now the devotion is not for anything in particular, but it is a prayer out of joy and out of gratitude. In these set of verses until the end of this chapter, we will see how a para bhakta thinks. How does he see the world? Essentially, such a person is able to see divinity in everybody, in every situation, and in every circumstances. With that background, we will listen to verse 16 being explained to us by Ullas. Over to you, Ullas.
Hari Om, Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. We have seen what all Bhakti Yoga comprises. Now let's see what are the qualities of that greatest bhakta. Like we saw in the second chapter also, that the qualities of that great Jnani are that he's always equanimous. Here we are trying to see what are the qualities of the great bhakta. Here it is said 5-6 qualities are there. Anapekshaha, Shuchihi, Dakshaha, Udasinaha, Gatavyathaha, and Sarvarambha Parityagi. All these type of bhaktas are the dearest to the Lord, and they are the highest level of bhakta. Now let's look at each of these terms. Anapekshaha, next slide. We are generally dependent on external factors for our happiness. We are dependent on them, so we have expectations out of them. And many times when the expectations are not fulfilled, we become disappointed. And so disappointed is part and parcel of expectations. So one who is free from expectations, free from dependence, will certainly be free from all disappointments. And once the expectations is fulfilled, we are joyful. It is unfulfilled, then we are disappointed. This merry-go-round keeps going on. And sometime in life that Jnani Purush realizes that I need to get down of this and I need to be free from all these expectations. Now, it is not entirely that we will be out of these expectations. They will always be there, but these should not be binding expectations. These should rather be preferences. If I get tea, it is fine. If I don't get tea and I get coffee, that's also fine. If I get neither, that's also fine. I'm happy in either and any which way. So we need to develop that inner strength that we are able to dispel those disappointments. Now that person is called anapeksha. He doesn't have any such apekshas or expectations. The next virtue is shuchi. Shuchi means cleanliness. That means both the things. External cleanliness as well as internal cleanliness. I might be very clean. I might be taking baths twice a day, very organized in my life. Everything is fine. But how are my inner thoughts? Are they in alignment with dharmic vritti? If yes, then I'm clean from inside also. Now this highest bhakta is clean from outside as well as from inside. One thing which is also mentioned is dakshaha, which means he's very efficient in how to deal with anything in life. There can be a person who becomes very impulsive and reacts to everything very violently. The other type of person could be just like a doormat, that he accepts everything. But this person is daksha. He knows how to behave in which situation. So he's very efficient. The next one is udasina. Sometimes this word has a little negative connotation, that you have just indifference. Here we can imagine this to be as impartial, that he's not partial towards a condition, a situation. For example, let's say if you're enjoying IPL games, then if I am partial towards, let's say there is a match between Mumbai and Bangalore. And now if I'm partial towards one team, then I would always be on this edge of my seat and be sometimes very happy, sometimes very sad based on what is the result. But if I'm impartial and I just enjoy the game of cricket, then I am not part of any group. Now I'm part of both the groups. Now I'm enjoying every ball. Everything is happening and I'm really enjoying. So indifference does not bring sadness or dullness in life. It actually brings double happiness, double enjoyment. So that is what is the meaning of udasina. And this highest bhakta has this virtue. In the next slide, we see gatavyathaha, free from sorrow. Sorrow comes from all our experiences, and experiences are beyond our control because they come from desha, kala, from where we are, from at what time we are, from what our past actions have been. We cannot decide them. What we can, however, do is change our attitude towards them. What does that mean? That I see that every experience, I make it as favorable condition for me. That it has come for me to grow spiritually, for me to learn something out of it, for me to prepare my mind for higher sadhana. So once we have that, like Swami Anubhavanandaji always says, learn from your own experiences all the time. And that's the greatest spiritual sadhana. So when we do that, then I'm not asking anymore, oh Lord, why me? Why all these bad things happen to me only? Rather than that, we should ask the question, what's in it for me? What can I learn from it? What is it that I can get out of this situation as favorable for me? And now no situation becomes bad. So then he becomes free from sorrow. So gata vyathaha. In the next slide, we see sarvarambha parityagi. Arambha means actions. Sarvarambha, all actions. Parityagi, he has given up. Now, giving up of actions does not mean that he is not doing anything. What here means is giving up of binding actions. What are binding actions? Actions done so that I feel complete. If I get certain thing in my life, if I get certain person in my life, if I make them do this or that, then I become complete, then I become purna. Now that feeling is to be given up. What we don't need to act for fulfillment. We need to act out of fulfillment. Now, whatever happens, I am already purna. Everything is anyway happening from God's will. So I have surrendered. And now I'm always purna. So that is sarva arambha parityagi. So in the next slide, we see this is a combination of all these characteristics, all these virtues, which make somebody a highest bhakta. And he is the one who is dearest to me. He is the one who attains me, says Lord Krishna. Thank you, sir. Hari Om.
Thank you, Ullas. That was a nice explanation and absolutely no scope for me to add anything else. We will go to the next verse, which will be explained to us by Mamta. Over to you, Mamta.
Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Yo na hrishyati na dveshti na shochati na kankshati shubha shubha parityagi bhakti manya same priyaha. The devotee who neither rejoices nor grieves, neither desires nor hates, and gives up good and evil is dear to me. In the next slide, in this shloka, Lord Krishna elaborates on the attitude of a devotee or bhakta who are dear to him. The attitude of the devotee Krishna talks about in the shloka are based on happiness and grief, raga, dvesha, and punyam and papa. In the next slide, Krishna says, ya na hrishyati and na shochati, means the one who is not overpowered by happiness and grief. When we are faced with a choice or encounter a situation, we are either partial to it or have a lukewarm response or be totally indifferent to it. Attraction or our enthusiasm is the cause of desires, and when we are repulsed with an idea, this generates negative emotions and forms opinions in us about the list of things we would like to stay away from. If our desires fructify, then we become harshita and we rejoice. On the other hand, if our desires are not met, then we become shochita and we are sad and we grieve. Desires, likes, dislikes, joy, hatred, grief, indifference, and so on. This is how most of our lives are consumed. But Krishna says that these emotional ups and downs should not go beyond a limit to cloud our discriminative power. Shastra says the greatest wealth of a human being is discriminative power, which differentiates from all other living beings. For example, we are bound to be angry at any point in time for any particular situation, but the anger should not cloud our discriminative power. We should be aware that our discriminative power or the intellect is being clouded, which means we have to take some time or postpone to analyze and then react during these situations. To have that much mental balance, to know that our mind is going out of balance, means that we have some kind of control on our mind. In the next slide, Krishna further goes on to say, na dveshti na kankshati. Na dveshti means freedom from dvesha or hatred, and na kankshati means freedom from raga or attachment. Attachment results in expectations, which in turn results in hatred if the expected result is not favorable. In other words, freedom from binding expectations. Krishna tells in the 4th chapter indriyasya indriyarthe ragadvesha vyavasthitam. That is, ragadvesha is natural in an individual. Vedanta says it is okay to have expectations, but be prepared for their fulfillment as well as their non-fulfillment, because you can only plan or contribute for the future, but you cannot control the future. This mental preparedness is na dveshti na kankshati in a bhakta. In the next slide, Krishna goes on to say, Shubha Shubha Parityagi. That means those who have given up punyam, which is shubham in the shloka, or good actions, and papam, ashubham or adharmic actions. When actions are done expecting materialistic outcomes for the actions, it results in punyam and papam based on the kind of actions. From Vedantic angle, both punyam and papam are bondage. Punyam is finite in nature, which also gets exhausted. On a lighter note, Swamiji says, punyam is a golden shackle, papam is an iron shackle, but both are shackles, both will bind us. This binding will not help us in the pursuit of ultimate truth, which is liberation. In the context of the shloka, punyam refers to noble actions that are performed selflessly for purification of the mind, that is, dedicate the results of actions to the Lord as a stepping stone towards ultimate goal. And also the noble actions done as Jñāna nishta, that is, one who has not only discovered the self, but also internalized the teachings of the self. Both these actions will not result in punyam, or these actions are considered inactions. And papam does not exist in the case of noble actions. In the last slide, in conclusion, Krishna's message in the shloka is, those who accept whatever comes in the way as Ishvara's blessings with faith and devotion to Ishvara are dear to him. Thank you, sir. Hari Om.
Thank you, Mamta, for a nice explanation of this verse. As usual, very nicely made slides. If there is something that I would like to emphasize, in addition to what you have said, is this word, Shubha Ashubha Parityagi. So a Jnani, a para bhakta, he gives up Shubha and Ashubha. Now this has been interpreted by commentators as giving up both punya and papa. Parityagi. Parityagi, like parikrama, a person who completely gives up both. He is no longer interested in punya or papa. Such a person does not create any agami karma, because he is now has no personal desire. He is now one with the whole. And this is the understanding of Shubha Ashubha Parityagi. Verse 18 will be explained to us by Dr. Srinivas Smoothi. Over to you, Dr. Srinivas.
Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Verse number 18 is like this. Samah shatraucha mitrecha tatha manapamanayoho sitoshna sukha dukkheshu samah sangha vivarjitaha. So let us see the meaning of each word. Samah shatraucha mitrecha. That means a person who treats both friend and foe as the same. Shatrau and mitre. These are the Ditya Vachana words. Mitram, mitre, mitraha. Like that it comes. That is Shatru, Shatrau. Ditya Vachanam. Because enemies and friends are spoken in Dvivachanam. So that's how it is Shatrau and mitre. So the pronunciation comes like that. So, and next is Tatha. That means and. Manapamanayoho. Mana, apamana. Manapamanayoho. Savarna Dirgha Sandhi here. That means and he treats the same for both honor and dishonor. And in the second line, Sitoshna Sukha Dukkheshu Samaha. Here, Sita Ushna means cold and heat, and Sukha Dukkheshu means pleasure and pain. So whoever treats these these characteristics as the same, that person. And sangha vivarjitaha. Sangha vivarjita means sangena vivarjitaha. That means who is free from attachment. So in the next line, let us see the Anvaya. Next slide, sir. Anvaya is like this. Shatraucha mitrecha samaha tatha manapamanayoho shitoshna shukadukheshu samaha sangha vivarjitaha naraha me priyaha. So these words we have to add here, although it's not there in the words. In Anvaya we add. So the Bhagavan Krishna is telling that man is dearer to me who treats both friend and foe as the same, and honor and dishonor also as the same, and heat and cold and pleasure and pain are also same, and who is free from attachment. He is dearer to me. So the word and the sentences are easier to understand. So now the issue is the Tatparyam. Next slide, sir. So now the problem comes, a person has harmed us and how to treat him as not our enemy. That's the issue. So here we have to take the example of Rama and Ravana and Dharmaraja and Duryodhana. So Rama did not consider Ravana as his enemy, but Ravana considers Rama as his enemy. That's the point here. Similarly, Dharmaraja did not consider Duryodhana as his enemy. So we know that when during the Aranya Parva, in the Ghosha Yatra story, when Duryodhana was abducted and defeated by Gandharvas, so Dharmaraja sends Arjuna and Bhima to secure Duryodhana, to relieve. And Arjuna and Bhima were not happy to go there because they considered Duryodhana as his enemy, but Dharmaraja did not consider his as enemy. So, but your enemy may consider you as enemy, but we should not consider him as enemy. Even in yajnas, which are conducted by the rishis in the earlier yugas, the arrows pointed at us will be destroyed. But we cannot point and we cannot put arrow on our enemy. So that's how the Vedic rituals are also in this pattern. So this is how it is explained. So what happens is, if we consider a person who has harmed us as an enemy, then our nearness towards the Lord will be distanced and the veil of Maya increases. That is the problem. Problem is that. And see, next, if you see the heat and cold, honor, dishonor, pain and pleasure. Here, 3 examples are given. Heat and cold means not the physical heat and cold. Here it is related to the physical body. So all the 5 sense organs, the skin, eyes, nose, taste and hearance. So anything related to the physical body and the 5 sense organs, that has been told as heat and cold. So something may be pleasurable to the body and something may be painful to the body. And pain and pleasure, sukha dukkha is related to the manas, that is mind. And honor and dishonor are related to the buddhi, that is intellect. So here, by body, mind and intellect, these 3 examples are given because we know that the body, mind and intellect are part of Prakriti. They are not part of Paramatma, that is Atma or Jivatma or Paramatma. So whatever happens to this body, physical body, mind or intellect, we should accept it. Say, if we'll be happy if somebody honors us, and we'll be happy if there is a pleasure and if there is cold. So now the problem is, when there is pain, when there is dishonor, when there is heat, then also we should develop the attitude of acceptance. So Dharmaraja has developed this attitude of acceptance, whereas others, Bhima, Arjuna, and they could not develop this attitude. That's the reason why Dharmaraja could attain moksha during the Swargarohana Parva. So it doesn't really matter whether the body is pained or the mind is feeling pain or the intellect is feeling dishonor. Because whether we feel honored or dishonored, whatever it is, we have to die at the end. So if there is a dishonor, we have to develop the quality of acceptance. And if there is honor, we have to develop the quality of contentment. Say, if we are unhappy with whatever happiness we have or whatever physical happiness we have, and if you keep on asking for more, So if you have some amount of money in this life, if we are not satisfied with this, we want little more money. So then in our mind, this quality of we keep asking for that. Once we keep thinking that we need more, and our actions will be directed towards that, and we'll keep on getting janmas and janmas. So to neutralize these aspects, we should develop two qualities. That is contentment for whatever we have got, and acceptance for whatever harm whatever we feel as pain. So these two qualities have to be developed by us. And a bhakta, not only simple bhakta and who is just praying for the Lord, a bhakta who has developed the qualities of the Lord, which are dearer to the Lord. So one should be a bhakta as well as the qualities which are dearest to the Lord. So these things have to be developed by a seeker, and a already evolved person or a person who has enlightenment will treat like this. So these are the things which we have to learn. So even the Vedic knowledge is about what it says is, so what is important from the time of birth to death. What is important is Atmodharana. This is a word used in by some of the gurus which I have read. It's nothing but evolution of the Atma, or you can as well call it as removal of the veil of Maya. Whether we have done in this life or not, whether you are happy and you have done Atmodharana, it's fine. Whether you are sorrow and then also you have done Atmodharana, it is fine. So it doesn't matter. So whatever bad things come to us, accept it as it is our karma phala, either in this life or in the previous life. And again, that does not mean we should not fight our enemy and we should surrender to the enemy, or it does not mean if the question of fighting comes, we have to fight, we have to give our 100%. Whether we win or not, it doesn't matter. That's the idea. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Srinivas. We will go to the next verse, verse 19 by Dr. Rupa. Dr. Rupa, please.
Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Verse 19 of chapter 12 goes like this. Tulya ninda stutir mauni santushto yena kenachit aniketha sthira matha bhaktiman me priyo naraha. The English translation, that devotee who is the same towards censure and praise, who is a person of limited speech, who is contented with anything, who is homeless, sannyasi, and who has firm knowledge of self, is dear to me. Next slide. With this verse, Lord Krishna concludes the description of a wise person's conduct or characteristics. The characteristics of a jnani or a wise person that he describes can be listed as, firstly, criticism or ninda versus glorification or stuti. Secondly, jnani is a perfectionist, yet very accommodating. Thirdly, jnani as a homeless sannyasi or aniketha versus a householder or niketa. In the next slide, elaborating on the enlisted characteristics, the wise person who accepts both criticism and glorification without any effort. This would come at the level of the words or vachikam, when compared to mana and apamana, which would come at the level of action or kayika. Let us take the example of the sky as shown in this picture. Just like the sky does not get affected whether someone throws roses at it or buckets of dirt. Similarly, a jnani is unaffected by criticism or praise. Moving on, a jnani is a perfectionist. He does everything properly, but at the same time, he is accommodative enough to put up with all imperfections. Next slide. The next most important characteristic of a jnani Lord Krishna talks about is about the mental sannyasi. A jnani who has derived his mental strength from one source, that is self-knowledge. Sthira matihi, what does that word mean? It means the one who has got firm knowledge. Here, the word firm refers to doubtless knowledge. And this doubtless knowledge is of Aham Brahmasmi. Lord Krishna says, such a jnani is dear to me, O Arjuna. Thank you, sir. Hari Om.
Thank you, Dr. Rupa, for a complete explanation of a very important verse. There are two lines which force me to speak something about santushto yena kenachit. That means you have heard this atmanevatmana tushtaha, santushta. A person is able to accept yena kenachit. Whatever it is, he is okay. This is the situation of a parabhakta who is so full of his own understanding of himself that everything is okay. There's another beautiful word, aniketaha, ordinarily translated as the one without a home, one who is homeless. Gautama Buddha also in one of his sutras gives a lot of importance to those who have left their homes. Now, why is this so important? All of us love our home. Have you had the experience of sometimes traveling out of home for a long time? You have traveled and stayed in many exotic, beautiful places, some places which may not have been so comfortable. But finally, when you come to your own home, your own bathroom, you feel, my God, so much at home. Why do we like our home so much? Because that is a place which we have created for ourselves. We have people whom we love, and that makes us feel at home. Who is this aniketaha? And aniketaha is a person who is able to see Bhagwan everywhere, and therefore, wherever he is at home. Can you imagine such a situation? When you are far away from home, when you may be stuck in between traffic, you're not able to reach home when you want. But if you can have that status that I am at home wherever I am. There is a very beautiful verse in the Bhaja Govindam, which I will ask Panaga to chant it for us. Panaga, please.
Suramandira tarumula nivasaha Shayabhutalam ajinam vasaha Sarva parigraha bhogatyagaha Kasya sukham na karoti viragaha.
Adi Shankara is describing the kind of joy of a person who has no home, who stays near a temple, under a tree, who lies on the ground, who wears whatever is available for him. Such a person who has got viraga, who's got vairagya. That means you may have a lot of possessions, but you are not possessed by any of your possessions. When you have such a situation, he said the joy that comes when you are not bound by anything. And that is the significance of this word, aniketaha. With that, we come to the last verse of this chapter, which will be explained to us by Chaitanya. Over to you, Chaitanya.
Hari Om. The 12th chapter, Bhakti Yoga, comes to an end with this verse, where Sri Krishna concludes his description of an enlightened person by giving the phalam. He says, Ye tu dharmyam amritam idam yathoktam paryupasate shraddhadana matparama bhaktaste ativa me priyaha. Those devotees who keep me as the primary goal and who faithfully pursue this righteous and immortal teaching, as mentioned above, are very dear to me, he says. So when we hear the description of such a jnani, naturally we will all love to enjoy such a state of mind. But how do I attain such a state of mind? As seen in the previous verses, there is no shortcut. One has to go through Bhakti Yoga consisting of all the 5 levels. And in short, it is nothing but Karma Yoga, Upasana Yoga, and Jnana Yoga put together, which is called as Bhakti Yoga. Therefore, Krishna states, idam yathoktam paryupasate. Once a seeker goes through the above 5 levels of bhakti yoga, then this teaching is in line with the Vedas, dharmyam, and it is amritam. It leads to immortality. It is a liberating lifestyle. So how should a person follow all the 5 levels of bhakti yoga? Krishna says it should be done with shraddhadana, with faith in its efficacy, full of commitment to God at all times and in all situations, and mat paramaha, keeping me as the ultimate goal. Here, one point to note is that when Krishna says me, which me is he referring to? Is it Ekarupa, Anekarupa, or Arupa? So here, he is referring to his nirguna form and not Krishna with form. Then what happens to such a Jnani Bhakta? Krishna declares, Te Bhakta ativa me priyaha. They will be dearest to me. Krishna is not playing favorites here. It doesn't mean others are less dear. What he means is that this kind of person has spiritually come closest to me because they have discovered that they are non-separate from me. They are the Jnani Bhaktas, the Para Bhaktas. Krishna uses a superlative expression here, Te ativa me priyaha. They are dearest to me. Shankaracharya connects this to the 17th verse of the 7th chapter, where he said, Priyo hi jnani no ati artham. I am dearest to the Jnani, Jnani is dearest to me. It was a sutra vakyam. And that sutra vakyam has been explained here in this chapter from the 13th verse up to the 20th verse. Now, regarding all these virtues that Krishna has enumerated, Swamiji also brings out some important points here for us to note. At the Karma Yoga and Upasana level, that is during Shravanam and Mananam, we need virtues for Jnana Yogyata Prapti. And after we attain Jnanam, also these virtues are still important for Jnana Nishta Prapti through Nididhyasana. But there's a subtle difference at Jnana Yogyata and the Jnana Nishta level. And what is that? At Jnana Yogyata level, I look upon these virtues as not only conditions for Jnanam, but also conditions for attaining moksha. But after getting Jnanam, I am practicing Nididhyasanam and working for Jnana Nishta only. Here I look upon these virtues as conditions for only Jnana Nishta Prapti and not for gaining moksha. Why? Because after Jnanam, nothing should be seen as a condition for moksha. Moksha should be seen as unconditional. The Jnanam or the knowledge that I get is that moksha is my very nature. Therefore, before Jnanam, virtues are required as conditions for moksha. But after Jnanam, virtues are practiced for Jnana Nishta, but not for moksha. If we don't see this subtle difference, then one has not grasped the teaching. In conclusion, those who abide in Brahman should follow these virtues. Whatever is the spontaneous trait of the Jnani should become a value for us to be practiced deliberately. Krishna has given us a powerful role model to follow. This chapter, therefore, gives us a wonderful vision of who we can aspire to be. Hari Om, thank you.
Thank you, Chaitanya, for a nice explanation of this concluding verse of the Para Bhakta. With a vision, can we all become a Para Bhakta? We now have a role model to be able to follow. There is one word that I would like to focus on, which you have already explained, Dharmyam Ritam Idam. So this chapter concludes by saying that this is the Amritam. This is the nectar of all the dharmas. One interpretation. So what we have studied in the Bhagavad Gita is the nectar of all the dharma. The other is this dharma, the Bhagavad Gita, leads us to Amrita. It leads us to immortality. Either way, the explanation is very beautiful. We are so privileged, so blessed to be able to study the Bhagavad Gita. All these teachings of the Bhagavad Gita should not be just words. It should be words that help us to understand that we can transform our lives and to live fulfilling lives and also to be able to handle any ups and downs in situations, to be able to handle life with a great sense of equanimity. Our next class will be on Disha. Disha is essentially a revision class on the Bhagavad Gita with a lot of emphasis on the fundamentals, the Tattva Bodha. So we will be studying the Gita verses with the background of the fundamentals, with the primary focus being inner strength. We want, and that will be the next class on the 25th of April. We will have a chanting of these verses, these 5 verses, that will be by Sahana. Over to you, Sahana.
Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Anapeksha suchir daksha udhasino gatavyataha sarvaramba parityagi yo madbhakta same priyaha yo na hrishyati na dveshti na shochati na kankshati shubha shubha parityagi bhaktimaya same priyaha samashatrau cha mitre cha tata manapamanayoho shitoshna sukha dukkheshu samasanga vivarjitaha tulya ninda stutir mauni santushto yena kenachita aniketa stira matihir bhakti mame priyo naraha yetu dharmyamritamidham yatoktam paryupasate shraddhadhana matparama bhaktastetiva me priyaha. Om Tatsatiti Srimad Bhagavad Gita Su Upanishatsu Brahma Vidyayam Yoga Shastre Shri Krishna Arjuna Sambadhe Bhakti Yogo Nama Dvadashodhyayah. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.
Thank you, Sana, for a flawless divine chanting. Thank you, Hegde sir, and all the teachers of the day for a divine session. Thank you, friends, for your sincere participation. Next Friday, on 29th April 2022, we will have a recap of this entire chapter. On Monday, 25th April 2022, let us log in for Disha at 6:45 p.m. Until then, Jai Shri Krishna. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om.